I always believed that loyalty meant something, that years of dedication, hard work, and sacrifice would count for more than a single mistake. But I was wrong. The moment I stepped into the boardroom that morning, I felt the shift in the air. My father, Richard Sterling, sat at the head of the table, his face a cold mask of disappointment. My older brother, Nathan, lounged beside him, a smug smirk tugging at his lips. My mother, Evelyn, sat silently, refusing to meet my gaze. "This is unacceptable, Emma," my father said, sliding a thick folder across the table. "A contract error of this magnitude could have destroyed our reputation." I picked up the document, my heart hammering in my chest. It was a shipping contract I had personally handled, but the details had been altered. The error wasn't mine. I had triple-checked everything. This wasn't. My father cut me off with a dismissive wave. "The board has voted. Effective immediately, you are no longer part of Sterling Maritime." It wasn't just the job. It was my home, my legacy, my entire life. I didn't. Nathan leaned in. "Just walk away, Emma. It'll be easier for everyone." I turned to my mother. She remained silent. That hurt more than anything. With no other choice, I packed my things and left New York behind, heading to Seattle. I thought it was over, but it was only the beginning. Seattle was supposed to be a fresh start. Instead, it felt like rock bottom. I rented a tiny apartment in a neighborhood that smelled like rain and desperation. The walls were thin, the heater barely worked, and my neighbor had a habit of blasting music at 3 a.m., but it was mine. Finding a job wasn't easy. Despite my experience, every interview ended the same way. "You're overqualified. We're looking for someone with less executive experience. We're worried you won't be happy in a lower position." It was humiliating. I had spent years proving myself at Sterling Maritime, and now I couldn't even land a mid-level job. One night after another rejection, I found myself sitting at a dingy bar, nursing a whiskey I couldn't afford. "That bad, huh?" I glanced up. A man stood beside me, dark-haired, late 30s, with a rugged, tired look, like someone who had seen his fair share of losses. I sighed. "You have no idea." He slid onto the stool next to me. "Try me." His name was Jake Carter, a former corporate lawyer who walked away from his career after burning out. Now he ran a struggling independent shipping company. "I need someone who knows logistics," he said after I told him my story. "Someone who can fix a sinking ship." I laughed bitterly. "You're literally hiring me to fix a sinking ship." He grinned. "What do you say?" I needed a job. He needed help. It wasn't my dream, but it was a start. I shook his hand. Deal. Little did I know, this deal would change everything. Working for Jake was nothing like working for Sterling Maritime. His company, Carter Freight, was a mess. Disorganized files, unreliable suppliers, and a team that had lost faith in leadership. "We've been bleeding money for months," Jake admitted as I flipped through reports in his cluttered office. "If we don't turn things around fast, we're done." I dove in headfirst. Long hours, endless spreadsheets, renegotiating contracts, and restructuring shipping routes. For the first time in weeks, I felt useful. But not everyone was happy about the changes. "You think you can just walk in here and fix everything?" One of the senior employees, Mike, confronted me in the break room. "We've been doing this for years." "And for years it's been failing," I shot back. Mike scowled, but he didn't argue. Because he knew I was right. Jake backed me up, and slowly things started to shift. Then, a familiar name popped up in my inbox. Nathan Sterling. Subject: "We need to talk." I stared at the email, my stomach twisting. Nathan hadn't reached out in months. Not after I was fired. Not after I left. So why now? I ignored it. I had more important things to worry about. But Nathan wasn't the type to be ignored. A week later, he showed up at Carter Freight's office. "What are you doing here?" I asked, crossing my arms. He looked around, unimpressed. "Nice place." "What do you want, Nathan?" He sighed, rubbing his temples. "Dad's sick, Emma. It's serious." The words hit me harder than I expected. "He's asking for you," Nathan continued. "He wants to make things right." I should have walked away. But part of me, some stupid, hopeful part, still wanted my father's approval. So I agreed to go back, and I would regret it. The Sterling estate hadn't changed. Same towering gates, same pristine lawn, same suffocating silence. I hadn't set foot here since the day my father destroyed my career. Nathan led me inside without a word. Our father, William Sterling, lay in a massive bed, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. His sharp blue eyes, once filled with authority, were now clouded with exhaustion. "You came," he rasped. I stayed near the door. "Nathan said you wanted to talk." He nodded weakly. "Sit." I didn't move. A flicker of something, regret, maybe, crossed his face. "I was wrong, Emma." I swallowed hard. "Which part?" "Firing me." calling me a disappointment, or pretending I didn't exist after I left. Nathan shifted uncomfortably. Our father sighed. All of it. A bitter laugh escaped me. And now that you're sick, you want to make amends. His jaw tightened. I want you to come back, to take your place at Sterling Maritime. I blinked. You're joking. I'm dying, he said bluntly. Nathan can't run this company alone. He needs you. I turned to Nathan. Is this why you reached out? To drag me back into this mess? Nathan looked away. It's complicated. No, it wasn't. I had spent months clawing my way out of this family's shadow, and now they wanted to pull me back in. I stood. I have a job, Dad, one I actually earned. You're wasting your talent at that second-rate company, he snapped. You belong here. I clenched my fists. I don't belong anywhere near you. And with that, I walked out. Nathan didn't try to stop me. But this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. I tried to forget about the Sterlings. But 2 days later, Nathan showed up at my office. We need to talk, he said, dropping a folder on my desk. I flipped it open, my breath caught. A merger proposal. Sterling Maritime wanted to buy Carter Freight. They're struggling, Nathan said. Your boss knows it. If he doesn't take this deal, his company won't survive another year. I felt sick. So this is your plan? If I won't come back willingly, you'll force my hand. Nathan leaned forward. This isn't personal, Emma. It's business. Like hell, it wasn't personal. You can fight it, he continued, but you'll lose. And when Carter Freight collapses, where will that leave you? I wanted to scream, to throw the damn folder in his face. Instead, I took a slow breath. Get out. Nathan sighed. Think about it. I didn't need to think. I needed a way to win. I told Jake everything. He ran a hand through his hair, looking grim. They'll eat us alive, Emma. Not if we fight back. He scoffed. With what? We don't have their resources. No, I admitted, but I know how they operate. I know their weaknesses. A reckless idea was forming in my mind. A dangerous, desperate gamble. We undercut them, I said. We steal their biggest contracts before they can move on the merger. Jake hesitated. That's risky. So is doing nothing. A long silence. Then finally he nodded. We were all in. And I knew one thing for sure. If we lost, I wouldn't just be out of a job. I'd be out of options. For the next week, Jake and I worked around the clock. We reached out to every major client Sterling Maritime had its eyes on. Some refused to listen, too afraid of my family's influence. But others were interested. They're overpricing their shipping rates, I told one CEO over a late-night call. We can offer you a better deal, and you won't have to deal with Sterling's suffocating control. By the end of the week, we had secured 3 major contracts. Not enough to stop Sterling Maritime, but enough to make them bleed. I was waiting for the retaliation, and it came faster than I expected. The next morning, Jake stormed into my office, face pale. They're suing us. I grabbed the legal notice from his hands, scanning it. Unfair competition. Breach of corporate ethics. I laughed bitterly. They're accusing us of unethical business. They're trying to bury us, Jake muttered. Tie us up in legal fees until we can't fight the merger. My stomach twisted. This was exactly the kind of power move my father would pull. I clenched my jaw. Then we hit back harder. I went to the Sterling office. Nathan was waiting for me in the conference room, calm as ever. You look tired, he said. Fighting us must be exhausting. I sat across from him. Dropped the lawsuit. He chuckled. Why would we do that? Because if you don't, I'll go public with everything. I leaned forward. Dad's health. The company's internal struggles. The fact that you're so desperate to control me that you're trying to destroy the only life I built outside of this place. Nathan's jaw tightened. You wouldn't. Try me. He exhaled sharply. This isn't personal, Emma. It's business. I shook my head. No, Nathan, you made it personal the moment you dragged me back into this. Silence. Then he sighed. What do you want? I met his gaze. Cancel the merger. Leave Carter Freight alone. Nathan studied me for a long moment. Then he smirked. Fine, on one condition. I tensed. What? You come back to Sterling Maritime. I felt like the ground had been pulled from under me. You said you didn't need me, I whispered. Nathan's expression was unreadable. I changed my mind. I should have said no. But the truth was, I wanted to win, and maybe part of me wanted to prove to my father that I was stronger than he ever believed. I took a deep breath. Fine. Walking back into the Sterling boardroom felt surreal. The executives, all men, all middle-aged, stared at me with a mix of skepticism and resentment. Nathan stood beside me, his expression carefully neutral. Meet your new director of global operations. Murmurs filled the room. I saw the doubt in their faces. I smiled. Let them underestimate me. One of them scoffed. You think you can handle this, Miss Sterling? I met his gaze, steady and cold. Watch me. I was back. And this time, I wasn't leaving.